SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
The Mid-Delta Auction Company Spring Consignment Public Auction is happening Friday, March 20th in Greenwood. Agricultural, construction, trucks and trailers, and more. Visit www.mdauction.com or call Will Jeffcoat at 662-299-2414.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to MidDays SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy.
Well, we can't seem to get through a weekend without all hell breaking loose, and it sure did this weekend. That is for sure. Sadly, to start out with, we have lost 4 troops, have been killed in Operation Epic Fury. Certainly our prayers go up for their families and our enormous gratitude to them for wearing our country's uniform and doing what they were ordered to do, which is their duty from the Commander-in-Chief. And sadly, they lost their lives. Not a lot of details that I've seen, Rhino, on exactly where and how, and I think that's probably forthcoming, but nothing right now. So,
yeah, I mean, if I had to guess, I would venture to say it was likely casualties from bases being hit.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I imagine if it had been something like a bomber or a fighter shot down, there would be much more conversation about it.
Well, and as you guys probably know, Kuwait inadvertently shot down some F-35 jets, American
F-15s.
F-15s, pardon me. You're right.
Yeah, they don't have the capability to take down the F-35.
F-35, right. My apologies. Just saw the 5 and stuck the 3 in front of it.
But that's one of the new things that has been talked about, but I think this is the first time it's really been implemented at scale, especially, is the ability of the F-15s and the F-35s to work together.
Yeah.
Where the F-35 is in the airspace undetected due to stealth technology, and it will get a lock on a target, signal to an F-15 over the horizon, well out of radar range.
Yeah.
To send basically a energetic telephone pole through whatever.
Incredible. F-15 was kind of the I would say the top of the military air assets the Air Force operates for a long time, right? It's been around a long time. It was the F-4s in Vietnam. Remember the stabilizer had what's called dihedral in it, kind of tilted, angled towards the ground. And actually, I may be wrong. They may be called anhedral. Haven't used those terms in a long time. There's anhedral, there's dihedral, and one refers to when it points up, angles up. The other when it points down. So, but nonetheless,
anhedral.
It is anhedral. Okay,
23 degrees of anhedral.
Okay, great. So I had it backwards. Been a while since I've talked about that, but then of course the fleet has been modernized since then. And
a couple times over now.
Yeah, exactly. These are incredibly powerful, sophisticated, complex machines, no doubt about it. And you see their might on display in this conflict. So air travel also in the region pretty much shut down in the Gulf region. Commercial air travel we're talking about. Now the latest is
except for the Goodyear blimp.
What about that?
I found the Goodyear blimp on the Flight Tracker app looking at the Middle East over the weekend, and I don't know if they weren't in Iranian airspace, obviously, but around the Persian Gulf, there's just the Goodyear blimp puttering along. And I was wondering, I'm like, all right, is that really the Goodyear blimp? Did they do an event over there and got caught up in all the craziness, or are the counterintelligence people having fun with tail numbers?
Yeah. How about that? That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. Huh. Well, once again, our gratitude, our prayers for the 4 servicemen killed, 5 injured. No report on that. Also, all the F-15s shot down by Kuwait. Again, a friendly fire accident. That's what CENTCOM refers to it as. All those crew members are safe. They all were able to get out. Really incredible. You know, and thinking about this, and I'm going to digress here a bit, I don't even know what channel my wife had on in her area of the house. I was back getting ready for taxes. And I walked through, and there was this documentary about the moon landing. 1969, July 20th, of course, first landing on the moon. But some stuff I didn't know about, showing testing of the lunar module. This made me think about that. And how they rigged up a system to test the lunar module. And Neil Armstrong was piloting it. He, of course, from that mission in July 1969, walking on the moon there. And they had a mishap in the guidance, and he was able to get out. There's video of this. I had no idea. This is testing it. 1968, by the way. And the limb just crashed hard, by the way. I mean, like, didn't fall out of the sky. It was propelled down to the ground by its engines and just exploded into flames. Meanwhile, you could see that he had escaped and ejected. And in this documentary, Rhino, they said that's why he got selected for that job. They felt like that a person who was able to figure that out, make that split-second decision, saving himself, obviously, but crash that test limb, if you will, the lunar module. Just incredible. It's hard to believe that was 1968. We had that sort of technology. You think about what we have today in these deadgum F-35s, for example. It's just, they're marvels. And it is a display of, I believe, the American free enterprise economic system. That's what creates this stuff. That's what allows this country to maintain its superiority, and it was certainly on display. The president, by the way, is scheduled to speak about right now. It said earlier today, they said 10 o'clock. 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock our time. So that's what the news channel continues to report, expecting that to occur. He has indicated to the media that he will not rule out sending U.S. troops into Iran. Quote, I don't have the yips with respect to boots on the ground like every president says. There will be no boots on the ground. I don't say it. I say probably don't need them, or if they were necessary. I do think that would change popular opinion in this country. I think in general, the overwhelming sentiment of the American people is, okay, I can sort of get into and support this action here because we're not putting boots on the ground in the country. I think most people would say, I don't want American sons and daughters in harm's way on the ground for this cause, for this purpose. But that's the president's latest statement on it. He, of course, as you know, is encouraging the Iranian people, go take over your country. is what he's saying.
Yeah, they hacked the TV station and played the video of him telling him that.
I didn't know that. Wow, that's pretty cool. That's really neat. My guess is that was planned, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that just happened spontaneously.
When the strikes first happened, Israel hacked into the Iranian call to prayer, the prayer reminder app they have on everybody's phone.
Yeah.
Hacked into that with messages of help is on the way and it's now your time and stuff like that.
Unbelievable. So also, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, he spoke this morning, and that got a little tense. I don't know if you caught that, but in some exchanges with the media, he got pretty fired up. He says this operation will not be, quote, endless. And this is as the conflict has expanded somewhat today. Iran's top national security official, Ali Larijani, vowed, quote, we will not negotiate with the United States. You're an idiot if you don't. You're going to die, and more people will die as a result. Negotiate. Stand down. Get the heck out of the way. And I know that's what the president's saying as well, and he's threatening more carnage if they don't. We're going to take a break right now on Middays. David Ibsen, Executive Director of Americans for Free Markets, joins Middays at 10:35 today. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Bum, 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 Iran. Bum, 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 Iran.
Oh, jeez. An oldie but a goodie.
Went to a mosque, gonna throw some rocks. Tell the Ayatollah, gonna put you in a box.
So there are, of course, some who believe that he still walks, that he's not been killed. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu, I think, was the first to come out and say, I have seen photos of him, right?
And there were
Deceased.
reports that Trump had been shown the same photos.
Okay, makes sense. So,
for context, that song is 5 years older than I am.
I was going to say.
That's how long of a problem this has been.
I remember. That's Weird Al, isn't it? Is he?
No, that's Vince Vance and the Valiants.
Oh, okay. Didn't he do one too, Weird Al? Where'd I get that from? Weird Al Yankovic, I'm
he's
talking
got a lot
about.
Of spoof,
did a lot of spoofs,
satire, funny
parodies,
songs.
Yeah. So, still waiting for the president to give remarks. That's what the news is at the current time. I know this weekend I did my best to keep up with the events as they were unfolding. The problem is, Rhino, is if you kind of earmark something, about an hour later, that's already old news. And so trying to keep up and just establish and assess where we are right now is difficult when you got something that's this ever-changing, this dynamic. But what we do know is that, first and foremost, in my view, sadly, 4 American soldiers have lost their lives in this conflict. And the president says he is not reluctant to use ground troops if necessary. As we said in the last segment, his exact quote was, I don't have the yips. That, of course, a common golf term, he being a golfer. I don't have the yips with respect to boots on the ground. So he's also indicated that he's not following polls. He doesn't care. He's just doing what he thinks is the right thing to do to achieve stability in the region and to loosen the grip these tyrants have had on that country. And I couldn't help but think over the weekend what a better place the entire planet would be to, again, restore civility, democracy, more of a Western civilization in that country than one that's run by a freaking cult. It's what it is. They'll tell you it's their faith, it's religion. It's not. It's a cult of death. How could you consider it anything but that? Reports, you've seen them, Rhino, as many as 30,000 of their own people killed. So here's what I know. It's human nature to seek freedom, happiness, security. It's just human nature.
To the point that if you escape jail in Mexico, it is not an extra charge tacked on you because they understand it's human nature to want to escape confinement.
Okay. I didn't know that. That's interesting. But
they're still going to catch you and throw you back in there. They're just not going to tack on an extra charge.
I got it. So my thoughts are, if you got to kill people to pursue your agenda, obviously there's a problem. I mean, do you need to talk about it further than that? That's pretty clear cut and straightforward. Oh, these people are in the way. We got to kill them. Hasn't that always been the MO of tyrants throughout history? This isn't anything new. They dissent. They object. They're speaking out against. Kill them. Incredible. All because, what do they want? Freedom. And these people don't want them to have it. It interferes with their personal fortunes and agenda. You're evil. You're sick. You don't deserve to be topside breathing the same air the rest of humanity does. And we were talking offline about, apparently when the president was asked, who do you think ought to succeed? He said, I don't know. Everybody's dead, right? We killed them all. So it appears that we had some intelligence that indicated they were all gathered together at the same place. We shared that with Israel. That's the reports, at least. You made a good point, though. Israel probably had a pretty good idea as well. They got very strong intelligence. They have to.
Well, they were likely the reason why they were all meeting in one place, because this would now be the fourth time Israel has interrupted electronic communications to force face-to-face meetings.
Right. On a covert sort of operational basis. They're pretty good at that. Absolutely right. Because otherwise, they probably wouldn't have been all gathered in that one location. But they were taken out. So, current polls show about 51% of Americans would favor military action against Iran to stop them from developing nuclear weapons. But when asked about engaging with Iranian leadership, 38%, it depends on the poll, this is just one I saw, favored negotiating with Tehran through diplomacy. 22 said the U.S. should pressure them with sanctions or not get involved. But I will just point out that I think boots on the ground would have an impact on public opinion on this. I hope that's not necessary. I really do.
And it's really not all that unusual for Trump to come out and say that, because he doesn't want to take anything off the table
100%.
to show any sign of weakness.
100%. That's absolutely right. So, again, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, at a press conference this morning said, quote, "This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change, and the world is better off for it. Touché." I agree with that. Again, he got testy with some of the media who really pushed him, I think, was trying to get under his skin a little bit. He also said peaceful nuclear ambitions do not need to be buried underneath mountains. That's totally true. He pushed back on this claim, and I agree with him, that Iran says, oh, no, we're not pursuing nuclear weapons. Horse hockey. And if you got one, you know they would launch it against Israel for starters, right off the bat. He also said, did the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, this morning, we didn't start this war, but we will finish it. Now, back here at home, you can't ignore the economic ramifications. The Dow down 250, but that's off its lows of the session. It was down, almost touching down by 600 earlier today. The NASDAQ is also down the S&P down, but the NASDAQ is down 85. It was down 350 earlier. It actually flipped over into the green about 30 minutes ago. So, look, it's no secret that investors are queasy when you got instability. The other concern, of course, is the disruption in the flow of oil. And it's not just oil that is produced by Iran, but it's blockading the Strait of Hormuz. So even though Iran is about 10% of the world's oil production, about 25% of it flows through that strait. And that's a problem. And so oil is up, although not like some were predicting. It's hard to tell. It's up 5 to 7%.
Well, I mean, without a navy, it's kind of hard for Iran to do anything in the Strait of Hormuz.
Pretty much did away with that thing, didn't they? Yeah, I agree. So crude oil right now, about $72 a barrel. And that's pretty close to where it was when the president took office. I'll admit I have concerns that if we don't get a fairly rapid resolution, I believe that we will. I'm optimistic that we will. But if we don't, are there political ramifications? Well, of course. If the price of oil stays elevated and that drives the price of gas up at the pump, of course, the Democrats will use that, and they'll use it effectively against the president and Republicans in general. It's unfortunate this is occurring in a midterm year, but here's what I believe, and I pray for, that we are going to achieve a resolution. Stability will be restored. The flow of oil will recover to where it was. And I think you'll see the price go down. I also think you'll see markets react positively, is what I believe. And markets reacting positively is good news for everybody. Look, the economy's on solid ground. It's in good shape. You know, you got GDP growth going on. We got inflation relatively mild, certainly improved from what it was under Biden. And we also got corporate earnings, which are the mother's milk of stocks. All those are positive signs for the economic outlook. So I'm going to remain optimistic. I'm going to go out on a limb here, Rhino, and say that by the end of the week, we'll see a significant spike, that the bulls will come out racing, and we're going to see equity markets rise significantly. We're coming right back with David Ibsen, Executive Director of Americans for Free Markets. Please stay with us.
From the Seabrook. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We are pleased to welcome now David Ibsen, Executive Director of Americans for Free Markets. Hey, David.
Hey, Gerard. How you doing? Good morning.
Doing great. Thanks so much for coming on. So tell us a little bit about your organization, what you guys are focused on these days.
Sure. So Americans for Free Markets is a coalition of business and community groups that work to promote economic growth and free markets across sectors, banking sector, artificial intelligence, energy, major infrastructure projects. And we support policies that empower businesses to make decisions in the best interest of their customers and shareholders without concern or worry or fear of government intervention or harmful micromanagement.
Speaking my language. So, David, do you guys advocate at both the state and federal level?
We work at both the federal level and the state level, yes.
Okay. Well, we have a bill here in the state of Mississippi that you're familiar with, House Bill 1597. Tell us about that and your position on that.
Well, it's a well-intentioned bill, I will say that. There's been an issue probably that your listeners are familiar with called government-driven debanking, where you have politicized regulators And this started under the Obama and Biden administrations. You have politicized supervisory entities that are telling banks to not service certain disfavored individuals or certain disfavored industries, and that's un-American. And it's been a problem. Thankfully, President Trump, when he came into office, saw this as an issue and issued an executive order instructing all the government agencies to end this very, very harmful practice. Now, some states are trying to introduce their own pieces of legislation, like HB1597. And like I said, it's a well-intentioned effort to address a problem. But because the federal government and President Trump is leading on the issue and is taking great steps to address the issue of government-driven debanking, we think some of the state level issues might end up causing more problems than actual solutions.
Yeah. It's similar to the artificial intelligence issue, is it not, David, in that we've got the federal government that's encouraging states not to enact artificial intelligence regulation, but states are kind of pushing back, saying, well, we have our own idea about what that regulatory framework should look like, and then you end up potentially with conflicts.
Yeah, you're right. It's very similar. I know that you serve on the AI task force,
I do.
Gerard, so you're very familiar with these issues. But yeah, I mean, I think in both cases, with banking, financial services, and also with AI, what you really need is one common national standard, so that the banks, the tech companies, know that they're dealing with a systematic, coherent system that's not going to create an unnecessary patchwork, additional layers of regulation that are just going to increase costs, increase regulatory burdens, and probably result in diminished services for the people that they're actually supposed to protect. In the case of the Fair Banking Access legislation, Mississippi, I think this is kind of what we're worried about.
Okay.
You have efforts being done at the federal level, and that state patchwork is going to ultimately harm Mississippi consumers and also small banks.
And so, David, just to clarify, we're not talking just about debanking, where I guess a customer, a company could have an account or accounts with a bank, and the bank just decides sort of randomly that they want to terminate that relationship, close those accounts because they don't like something about potentially about the customer themselves. But we're also talking about maybe banks refusing, right, to open accounts for potentially new customers based on their held beliefs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, there's thousands of banks serving millions of customers all across the country, and they make decisions on opening and closing accounts all the time.
Sure.
It might be because of fraud, might be because an account is dormant, might be because of a regulatory issue. That's just, them doing business and using their expertise to judge who they should serve. There's a smaller subset where, yes, you have these politicized regulators, supervisory entities that are telling the banks, hey, there's nothing necessarily materially wrong with this individual or this business. We just don't like their attitude, their religious beliefs, their political beliefs, their social beliefs. And so we don't want you to service them. And when these regulatory agencies make a suggestion to a bank, really it's more of like an instruction.
Okay.
And that's the kind of thing that President Trump is taking steps to end.
David, the free market person in me says, hey, I have the right to do business with who I want to do business with. That if for any reason or no reason, honestly. So I get a little concerned when government says, oh, no, you can't DQ them or reject them or just eliminate a relationship with them because it's for the wrong reasons. I don't need a reason as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And, banks aren't necessarily utilities, right?
Right.
I mean, there's all different kinds of banks out there people can go to. And if one bank doesn't have the expertise to provide you an account, you can always go to another bank. And you know this, there's onerous, excessive, maybe complex regulations that are already in place in the financial sector. I don't think what we need is additional layers of regulation, additional layers of complexity at the federal level or at the state level. Even if you have something like in Mississippi, a well-intentioned bill, it's just going to add additional layers of regulation, and ultimately it's just going to hurt Mississippi consumers and especially the smaller banks who are going to have to beef up their compliance efforts. and expend more to meet those regulations and comply with both state and federal regulations.
I guess one that we heard a lot about across the country, I don't remember hearing it here, that I'm sure you're familiar with, was some of these big banks were saying that they wouldn't bank gun manufacturers and other businesses involved in guns themselves. I haven't heard that in the state of Mississippi, but I just feel like with the number of financial institutions we have, somebody will take that business for them.
They absolutely will. I don't. Banks aren't looking to disqualify
That's right.
Different segments of the economy. They want to bank as many qualified individuals and businesses as they possibly can. And there's a lot of variety for different people who want to receive accounts. If there's not expertise one area, they can go to another area. So we should let the banks just basically do what they do best. They're very good at this, which is evaluating customers on the merits and make sure government can take maybe a step back. Certainly not what we saw under Obama and Biden administrations, where you had the government actually telling banks for no reason who they could or could not bank. So what's being done at the federal level, I think, is very, very good. At the same time, we also want to take a step back and make sure that we're not overcorrecting with this kind of stuff. Bad behaviors have occurred in the past, but we don't want to overcorrect so that we're now putting additional burdens on the banks and getting in the way of their evaluations of who they should be doing business with.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So we're talking about the private sector, and I say that because back in the Obama administration era, you probably recall the IRS was sort of applying a political standard, if you will, to the issuance of nonprofit status. Well, that's government. That's a little different than the private sector. And that's discrimination, clearly, coming from government.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't really matter what political party you're from, where you sit on the political spectrum. I think that we can all agree, when the government starts putting its finger on the scale and is using its immense regulatory power to decide winners and losers, to decide who has fair access to this service or that service, this is just something I think rubs all Americans the wrong way. It doesn't matter if you're in Mississippi or New York, quite frankly. I think we want the government really to kind of take a step back and let our really prosperous, knowledgeable businesses make the decisions that are in the best interests of their shareholders and their customers. And that's why even when you're looking at a well-intentioned bill like you have in 1597 Mississippi that wants to protect consumers, you say, Is the answer to all these problems always more regulation? Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. And maybe you want to let this all play out at the federal level, follow what President Trump is doing, because he's been leading on this issue from the White House. And I think we're going to get a good solution.
That makes sense. We got a couple of minutes left. David, what else are you guys working on these days?
Well, we're working on AI, as you mentioned before, Gerard. There's a lot of similarities between the banking sector and what's happening with AI. It's obviously a booming industry. There's a lot of discussion about it. Actually, you can't really escape discussion of AI, even if you try to. So you want to make sure that as this technology keeps developing and as it's being deployed across the sector, and as we're engaged in really this intense competition, with China to see who's going to lead this technology, we want to make sure that there's one standard and that the government, again, maybe well-intentioned, maybe not, isn't placing roadblocks and onerous regulations in the place of our great enterprises, our great businesses that are trying to develop and then deploy this technology.
Makes total sense. 100% in agreement with you on that. David Ibsen, Executive Director of Americans for Free Markets, has been our guest. David, appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, Gerard. Have a good day.
You bet. We're coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth studio.
Hello, my name is Joe.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays on this Monday from the Element Wealth Studio. The president is speaking to the country right now. He says an Iranian regime with nuclear capability is intolerable. Do you think, Rhino, that maybe our intelligence determined that despite the, what was it called, Operation Midnight Hammer last year, that obliterated at least what we thought was Iran's nuclear capability, that we've learned, we've gathered some updated intelligence indicating now they didn't quite totally get rid of it, or perhaps they just restarted it, and they're continue to work on it. They just are defiant about it. It's kind of what I'm reading between the lines here. That, of course, and the fact that these people were killing their own people. And that's unacceptable. Now, there's always the question on minds of Americans, is that any of our business? And should we get involved? And I agree. That is a tough one. It's conflicted me as well. I will say this about the president. He takes action. That's the one thing you got to respect about the guy. You may not agree with his actions, but I'd a whole lot rather have somebody who is decisive and takes actions rather than someone who's just mealy-mouthed and just throws a bunch of stupid words and rhetoric out there, which amounts to nothing and achieves nothing, except I guess you think you're pandering to a base. This president doesn't fool around. And I would submit, maybe I'm biased because I'm a business person. That's the way you have to operate a business. You can't just talk about stuff. You can in politics, unfortunately. You see, in business, you got to make a payroll. In politics, I'm here for another 4 years or 6 years. And even then, I'm still probably going to be okay. That's what's wrong with politics in general. But in business, you can't. You're always looking over your shoulder. Somebody's coming after you. And that makes you better. Makes you better. But in this case, I think this president, with, of course, being a business person and having to make critical decisions throughout his entire career before he ever entered the world of politics, he's decisive. He consumes all the data and the information, boom, makes a decision. We're going ahead. So you may disagree with it, but, man, I'd rather have somebody, again, that does act rather than somebody that just talks. And so kudos to him for that. He just said Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. So that, reading between the lines, it seems like they haven't stopped their ambitions, despite Midnight Hammer, which obliterated. That was mind-boggling what happened last year. Another testament to the incredible technology we have in this country. And some people may not like this. You know this. Driven largely by artificial intelligence. That is powered by data centers. The data center nuts are driving me crazy here lately, by the way. I sent you a screenshot. I'll have to share this with the audience over the weekend. I thought you would enjoy taking a look at that. And so I go out there sometimes and get onto these people that are these anti-data center people. I engage with them on social media, and I say, well, you're using data centers to protest data centers. And one of them said, I said that to you, oh, sorry, I'll just put an ad in the newspaper. And I reminded him, they use data centers too. Does that just not illustrate the ignorance here? So it's okay for you to use data centers to protest data centers because it turns out that's more effective than putting an ad in a newspaper. You just told us why we keep building data centers. Am I wrong about this? You know this is 100% correct. Good grief, man. And now the Democrats in Mississippi, you may have seen that. They've weighed in. They're, of course, going after Governor Reeves on his involvement, as he should be, as the governor in economic development, which has brought significant investment to the great state of Mississippi from the hyperscalers in some of the crazy stuff that they're saying, I know you're shocked at this, where they go through like a fact-checking exercise on the governor. And it's another one of these deals where, well, they don't create that many jobs. Well, there's nothing preventing any other business from coming in here and creating jobs. How many times do we have to explain that? It's not like, well, we can either have a data center or another business that hires 10,000 people. It's not an either or. Of course, pretty hard to find any single location business these days that would have that many people in it. We don't need that many people doing those kinds of jobs. It's just unbelievable. They cite a project in Wisconsin. Microsoft hired 3,000 workers to build 2 data centers, but they only have 200 that are now permanent. Okay, are we against having 200 people that are making 6 figures? Is that a problem? I guess so to these people. What the hell have you done, Democrats? 0. Look at your Democrat-run Delta coming right back.
Your hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Are you thinking about retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. The C Spire text line, it's wide open, 601-879-4395. So the president, his remarks were rather brief this morning since we've been on the air. He says that we're ahead of our projected time frame. That was his underlying message this morning. He also said 49 Iranian leaders have been killed, 49 in this operation. Where does it go from here? It's hard to tell, but I do hope that the Iranian people are motivated by the president's actions and his encouragement to take their country over, restore democracy.
If the videos of their celebrations in Tehran are any indication.
Yeah, I agree. And other cities in the country as well, as you've seen. But it seems to be sweeping the nation. Are we just so I started thinking about this. Are we just so fortunate to live here? We have problems, of course. That ain't one of them, though. They literally, I should say, walk the streets in their own country, worried about their own leaders assassinating them, executing them. So, though we have our challenges, and we go at each other with those, that ain't one of them. Your very life and that of your family. It's sad. And I just can't help but think, but man, how much better would the world be without these people in charge? Way better. Prosperity, safety. Think about all the money, all the time, all the angst, all the resources just to keep these people from doing bad stuff. If those were directed to more productive endeavors, we're all better off. I think that's lost on a lot of people, unfortunately. I do think that the president's remarks maybe, Rhino, soothe the concerns of traders because now the NASDAQ's green and the Dow's only down 87 points. I think probably the message that we're ahead of schedule, because that's what they want. They want to see, okay, what's the plan? When are we done with this? When can we be assured that we're not going to keep this effort going for long? The Strait of Hormuz is going to be open. It's going to be business as usual. That's what they're looking for. Of course, they're hedging their bets, as they say. Now, the left's got to be irate today because the big oil companies, they're all up. Imagine that. They're all up because price of oil's up. Crude oil, looking at it right now, the latest, it has pared its losses. It's up to about $70 and change. So it's certainly better than it was earlier when it had hit about $73. And there were some of the industry analysts predicting, you've seen this, over 100 they thought is where the spike may take us. And that would be devastating to the economy. I'm also thinking that maybe those traders are feeling a little better about the outcome. And, of course, that the equities traders and bond traders they're latched on to the price of oil as well. You can't help but do so because unlike what the Democrats in this country say, we need that to live. We're pretty much still reliant on fossil fuels. So, but the president's message seemed to be a bit upbeat and optimistic here just a few moments ago. And I'm optimistic as a result of those. So that's good. Hopefully we get this thing over with.
With the decisive and rapid military actions to arrest Maduro and take out the Ayatollah in about a 2-month span, it really is a pretty big indictment of the forever wars that presidents from both parties continue to fight.
And people are calling out the president on that because he said that on the campaign trail, that he would not be a president who presided over forever wars. And you can't conclude that, he broke that promise after 3 days. I would hardly call that a forever war. Now, yeah, if it prolongs...
It's more looking back on Iraq and Afghanistan for why were we there so long?
I agree.
If you can enact global change this quickly,
why? Hey.
Other than to enrich oneself in the D.C. area.
Go back even further than that to the terrible era of the Vietnam War, that we didn't even know what the heck we were doing there, losing the lives of American soldiers, and got out of there and still don't know exactly what, if anything, right was achieved. Kind of left in shame. And I do think that was, does it not feel like more of a political war than one that had like an underlying safety and security objective? I get it with this one. You're talking about bad people having nuclear weapons. Yeah, that's a threat to the world. That wasn't the case in Vietnam. It's a stain.
Also, Iran supplied something like 20% of oil to China.
China, that's right. At a discount, by the way, at a significant discount. And, of course, they're using it for their ambitions against this country and the rest of the world, the free world at least. Now, top U.S. general this morning, that would be Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Dan Kane. He said, to be clear, this is not a single overnight operation. And he kind of warned that it may take some time to achieve our military objectives. Now, it's hard to read between the line and figure out, well, what does that mean? We're going to continue to bomb and have these major assets in the region? I don't know. I mean, you could have covert military operations going on, right, that are working towards achieving our military objectives. And, of course, not only is he not going to tell you that, I also think, maybe to your point a minute ago with respect to the president saying, I'm not ruling out troops on the ground, that he's delivering a message to those who think we may not be serious about getting the job done. I believe that's also part of the reason for saying, this may go on for a while, guys. Just kind of be aware of that. Therefore, you might want to come to the table and start talking. So there's some chess playing going on, as there should be. Absolutely. Totally. 100%.
What I can't wrap my head around is, I get it, the You chopped the head off the snake. You took out the leadership chain in Iran. Whose bright idea was it in Iran to just start seemingly drunkenly targeting every single neighboring country and firing off everything you can?
That makes no sense to me.
Because that has turned several countries that would have at least paid lip service to being allies to Iran. It's turned them against them.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Saudi Arabia reserving the right to respond with lethal force. And Saudi Arabia just a couple weeks ago was saying, no, y'all can't stage the attacks out of our country.
Yeah, I agree. That seems kind of weird. Also, you got some of the MAGA folks that are melting down over this. Marjorie Taylor Greene, once again, seeking attention. Also, Tucker Carlson. They've lashed out. And then there's someone else as well. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's probably the main one. Andrew Tate, a friend of Donald Trump Jr., and also the president's other son, Barron, he went to X to say, nobody wants this war. He's a self-proclaimed misogynist, by the way. What a weird dude.
Yeah, he's a piece of work.
Yeah, I know. MAGA Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna on X said, hold our country in prayer right now. Hold our service members and their families in prayer right now. Hold the innocent people of Iran in prayer right now. I don't know that I would say that's a dissenting opinion and viewpoint. And then alt-right Milo Yiannopoulos, little less diplomatic. Oh, gosh. He wrote, oh, how disgusting. F you, Mr. President. Aren't they something? Far-right figure Nick Fuentes on X, said, no war with Iran. Israel is dragging us to war. America first. So, controversial at best. These people seem to be in the minority, though. That's what I would say at this point. We're going to step aside for a break. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. We'll get to some of your texts.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
So hard to please, but look around, leaves are brown, and the sky is a hazy shade of winter. Give us salvation all around.
The original Simon and Garfunkel version, Hazy Shade of Winter. Redone by the Bangles, right? As I recall. Yeah, one of their big hits. On the C Spire text line, the old kangaroo remained pretty settled. Yeah, talking about the markets is Rhino likes to refer to them when they're hopping all around, up, down, in the same session, in the same day. That's kind of what we're seeing today, over and below the unchanged line. And I think that's, Rhino, because investors, traders are trying to consume what is just a fire hose of information. And I do believe the president's remarks this morning maybe quelled some of those concerns. Look, it's natural to expect when you have geopolitical unrest, the bears take over. And they did, pre-market, and did in the early moments of the session. But now things have stabilized somewhat, as has the price of crude. So hopefully this is all good news. And the president saying, we're ahead of schedule, I do think that was a positive piece of information that traders picked up on. So now the NASDAQ turned positive. Now the 10-year yield's also up. That, of course, that's important because that's the yield on the 10-year note issued by the Treasury that is tied to most consumer credit, mortgages, car loans, credit cards, etc. So it's kind of where that is. And then I wondered, Rhino, would something like this cause the Fed? Would it cause a change in attitude on their part? That, just to make sure our economy remains churning, that they see fit to maybe lower rates on a more advanced basis than most believe they will later this year. I don't know. Of course, I heard two economists talk this morning. No surprise. Their views on that move were polar opposite. Yeah, I think they will. No, I don't think they will. So that's why we have traders. That's kind of the good news there. It's what makes the old markets work. How great is it to get 3 shot down and all crews survive, says John in Pontotoc, referring to the F-15s that Kuwait apparently inadvertently splashed. And, all were able to escape and avoid any injury whatsoever. I agree, John. Ricky in Aberdeen, I'm pretty certain I saw where 3 of the servicemen killed were at a base bombed in Kuwait. Certainly could be. That's plausible, right? Because that's pretty much where any destruction to American assets occurred that I'm aware of. I don't think we lost any air assets, nothing on our ships at sea or any of those naval assets. So I think it was just, crazy Iran bombing American bases in these neighboring Middle Eastern countries. And
but it hasn't just been bases. I mean, they've been hitting
that's right.
hotels and resorts. I mean, heck, Qatar came out with a statement earlier today from their Ministry of Defense saying that they took out 2 Iranian-launched Su-24 fighter jets. Those are from Russia. I believe the Sus are from Russia. Maybe getting confused with China. But either way, one of those 2 jets from Iran were taken out. They intercepted 7 ballistic missiles and 5 drones, all launched from Iran into Qatari airspace.
Okay. So, but don't you think maybe, Rhino, that some of that's just combination of indiscriminate bombing and they really can't navigate their own assets?
I mean, that
armaments?
was the problem with the reports on Saturday that a school had been hit by a missile.
Okay.
And then footage came out of an Iranian missile having a failure during launch and falling on the school.
Yeah. Well, incompetence, sheer incompetence.
But then you start looking at the report on the school, and this is Iran we're talking about, and it was a school for girls?
Yeah. They didn't make any sense.
Class on Saturday?
Yeah, that didn't add up. I agree. I totally agree. On the C Spire text line, Scott and Clinton, I was talking earlier about catching this documentary last night. That was fascinating about our journey to the lunar surface. I haven't seen this one before. I've seen, several different little pieces, snippets, but this was a pretty comprehensive account. It was really good. Like I said, going back to the training of how to pilot the lunar module with Neil Armstrong getting the nod to lead the Apollo mission that went to the moon in July of 1969, and it was because of the way he handled, it was reported in the documentary, a malfunction of the limb, and it crashed, and he was able to get out of it, and it was caught on video. That was just fascinating, because I'm telling you, that thing slammed into the ground wherever that training was occurring, and it just blew up, looked like a bomb. Nuclear bomb, the sort of plume that came up from that. Scott and Clinton said, I got hooked on that documentary when I was supposed to be changing the water pump on my truck. It was good, wasn't it, Scott? I found it fascinating. And I got to tell you, made me proud to be an American when you see all of those brilliant minds coming together with what today would be considered very primitive technology and tools, that they were able to do that. It's just amazing. It's a marvel. And it's, again, a testament to the greatness of this country. Totally. And it fulfilled John F. Kennedy's goal, getting there by the end of the decade. He wouldn't be allowed in the Democrat Party today, would he? He's too reasonable, too rational. Man, oh man.
I actually just found footage of one of the American pilots that had to eject due to the friendly fire in Kuwait.
Yeah.
Being picked up by Kuwaiti locals. Speaking English to the American pilot, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?
Wow.
Are you okay?" And at the very end, "Are you okay? Thank you so much for helping us. Are you sure you're okay?"
That's so cool. Man, that's good to hear. Good to hear. Mo says, I caught an Air Force C-17 heading into Iranian airspace on flight radar, and their transponder turned off when they were offshore. Could we have paratroopers or special forces on the ground? It's possible. Yeah, I don't know. And I'm sure that was by design to turn the transponder off. For those of you that aren't familiar with that, that's just a device on board an aircraft that emits the aircraft's location and some other information as well, so that air traffic control can pick that up, as well as onboard systems on, I don't know about commercial aircraft, but on military aircraft, they have the ability to also receive and analyze, process transponder information from other aircraft. I don't know about if commercial aircraft do. In general, though, it's used to tell air traffic control where you are. That's how they track you. That's how you show up on the screen that you see that most people are familiar with, an air traffic controller sitting in front of, and you see aircraft moving around. That's because that transponder is, again, projecting that information that is received by equipment that can read that transponder and then plot the location.
And there's a now infamous story of an AC-130 gunship responding to Houthi terrorists in the Persian Gulf, and they left their transponder on for their gun runs. And you could literally watch them. The Houthis fired a missile, and you could watch them go to where the missile was fired and make a run, and turn around, make another run, turn around, make another run.
Wow. Tim and McGee says, in my opinion, we are 40 years overdue to bomb Iran. Josh from Laurel, Trump said it would last 4 more weeks. What do you think? I don't think he said definitively 4 more weeks. I think he said maybe up to, kind of throwing that out there. Man, I hope it's before then. I don't know. Of course, none of us have access to the information that he does and his inner circle do that are orchestrating this event, this operation. But I do applaud him for coming out and sharing that information with the American people. And who knows, Rhino, that also could be a decoy for those that are on the receiving end of this operation. Hey, we're here for 4 weeks if we need to be. Can you imagine 4 more weeks of this? What kind of damage that could be done? A lot. So, man, say what you want about Pontius Pilate, but you have to respect him for taking action. Trump sent bombs, Obama sent pallets of cash, said Ed from New Hope. Totally true. Like right when he was exiting office.
Didn't Pontius Pilate wash his hands of it?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure that I got that. Yeah. A little different. Trump's not in this case. Takes full responsibility. Ordered it. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
From the Zebra.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
You turned me on. You lit me up like the sweetest cup I share with you. You lit me on. Don't you ever stop. I'm here with you. Now it's all or nothing, 'cause you said you follow through.
A great tune and a great video and some awesome drums, too, in that one, huh? Appreciate that, Rhino. A little Simple Minds here on Middays from the Element Wealth studio. The Dow now turning negative, but not too bad. Down 61 points. Certainly, that's off the lows of the session. The NASDAQ up 73. Just paying attention to that because these investors, they're up on what's going on. They're following it diligently and making their decisions accordingly. Paula Meridian says, when I was just talking about how fortunate we are to live in this country, and sometimes we take that for granted where we're not looking over our shoulder. Now, I know there's some people in this country that would disagree with me on this, but in general, we're not looking over our shoulder worried about the government executing us. We got lots of problems, but in general, that ain't one of them. Now, if you step out of line...
you don't have women in America having to secretly teach their daughters to read and then having to flee the country when it's discovered.
Yeah, that's true. Or cover their faces or other stupid things, honestly. It diminishes the dignity, at a minimum, of females. Yeah, no doubt. Incredible. But Paul says, there's no better place in the world to be born than in the nation that supports Christian values. I agree with that, Paul, and I think it's also fair to say that there are other very passive nations as well that support similar values. They just maybe don't support Jesus Christ in their religions and their faiths. But I agree. There's no doubt that we've got to always keep in mind that that was the basis, the foundation of this country. And it's really pretty straightforward what God and Jesus Christ taught us, which is to, of course, respect human life and love one another. Pretty straightforward. That's about all you need to know, honestly, when it comes to everything else that emanates from that in our Christian beliefs and values and doctrine. It really starts with that fundamentally. Is that not the problem, though, in Iran, Rhino, or prior regimes, tyrants, authoritarians that had no regard, placed no value on human life? And in some cases, human beings were in the way of achieving their goals, their objectives. So they just eliminated them. Could there be anything more evil than that, man? Just incredible. On the C Spire text line, they can do it without us this time. Just talking about America's involvement, feeling like we should not be involved. Tucker and Marjorie Taylor Greene are actually patriots. 70% of Americans agree with them. I don't know that I've seen anything that indicates 70% of Americans.
And I wonder how quickly Tucker Carlson changes his tune now that Qatar is on board. Because he seems to be kind of a puppet for them.
It does seem like that in some of his ramblings in the past. The good thing about this incident, says Jerry in Waynesboro, is our defense system we have given to Kuwait seems to work pretty good. It does, but Rhino, tell the folks about the stealth technology being used or Chinese stealth technology.
Yeah, I mean, according to Chinese media, Iran had China's highest tech advanced anti-stealth radar systems, the YLC-8B. They had them turned on almost a month ago now, after being delivered from China with Chinese techs and personnel to get them up and running. And, they didn't do a whole heck of a lot of good, to the point that now on social media that you can get to behind the Great Firewall of China, you have some Chinese citizens cracking jokes about the brand new top-of-the-line anti-stealth Chinese radar with a Photoshop sign saying, 1, if the radar is not smoking, then there's no stealth in the area, and 2, if the radar has been blown up, there's likely stealth in the area.
Oh, man. Doesn't seem like that's working out very well for them.
But yeah, Iran went to China and said, "Hey, we can't have another Midnight Hammer. We need your best stuff." And China sent it, and now they're getting shown that their best stuff isn't really up to snuff.
Oh my gosh. Well, not surprised that their stuff doesn't work. Well, on the C Spire text line, somebody did say, yeah, commercial aircraft can pick up other aircraft from their transponder through using ADBS in and out. So that would be some onboard avionics. So an aircraft's ability to broadcast its position and be received on board another aircraft. Okay. I wasn't sure. I thought it might make sense. I know that there is all sorts of more advanced technology to detect not only terrain, but of course other aircraft in the area to just enhance and improve navigation and safety, honestly. So appreciate that. Dan in Hattiesburg says, reminds me of the Scuds from the Gulf War. Man, I hadn't heard that in a while. I forgot all about that. Thanks for reminding us of the old Scuds that turned out to be duds, right? Well, they're not exactly going where they pointed them to go, right? That was the problem. And
in fairness, Patriot had the same problem at the same time.
It did. I agree.
It kind of went where it wanted to go at times.
On the C Spire text line, we should bring Vietnam-era Puff the Magic Dragon back out of retirement just for intimidation alone. Be worth it. Oh, man. But Gary in the Berg, our favorite golfer on the C Spire text line, says, the reporters are trying to figure out what the yips are because that's what the president said. He didn't have any yips when it comes to deploying ground troops. I have more than enough confidence in our military and our president. God bless America on the C Spire text line. I agree. Jeff for Brookhaven, good morning, Gerard. Why is it not considered price gouging when gas goes up 30 to 50% just on reports that oil may go up? Well, first, it's not gouging because they're not taking advantage of any sort of emergency situation where there's a significant constraint of the product itself. So I know that is typical, a typical complaint, but in general it has to do with the timing of distribution. So it's not that fuel retailers are making out like bandits selling retail gas. In fact, quite the opposite. It's a lost leader for them. They want you to come in the store and buy all that other stuff that they make more money off of. But it wouldn't rise to the level of price gouging, even if they did. But if they did, unless everybody else followed suit, such that, hey, we know we're the only place you can get this, which is what will happen a lot of times in the aftermath of storms, right? So I just trust Trump, says Karen in Oxford, when he decides the number one terrorist U.S. haters in the world need to be placed on the map where Iran used to be, including at some of America's universities. I heard this weekend one of the Ivy League schools, I can't remember which one, was it Columbia, Princeton maybe, where they had some fools out there that were hoisting very anti-American signage and chants and so forth. They hate this country, don't they? Do they thrive on teaching that and indoctrinating students to hate the country? But yet, when they get out, they want the country to make sure they got a place to work, right? Where they can earn multi-six-figure incomes, like right off the bat. Oh, but I hate the country. And by the way, some can and do, only in this country. They seem to lose sight of that. Try that in another country. Ain't happening. Unbelievable. Ah, yes, Tucker Carlson, who has business with Qatar. What about the politicians who take money from Israel? I don't know. What about them? I don't know that means a whole lot. Maybe I could get some spare tubes for my ham radio amps from Iran when the smoke clears, says Jerry in Waynesboro. The female grandmaster that will lose 2 different titles due to her refusal to wear head covers and being escorted by a male chaperone if she wants to go out. That on the C Spire text line. Yeah, that's absolutely a good example right now of the oppression and the discrimination that you see in these other countries, and in particular those that adhere to the cult we're talking about. Is our ammo going to hold out? China can make it forever. Interesting. We're coming right back with a final segment here in the Element Wealth studio.
I'm all shook up. Polly up a.
Are we going to do this? Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Puff the magic dragon lived by
On the all-hit request line there.
and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Little Jack
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. That's Ron from Ocean Springs, right? Requested that, I believe. So,
A couple people chime in about it. Ron was just saying that the AC-130 is the better Puff the Magic Dragon replacement.
I got you. Well, we made it happen. Appreciate that, Rhino. So American politicians taking money from a foreign nation doesn't mean much. If it were China or Russia, you'd be singing a different tune. Well,
Yeah, because China and Russia are adversaries.
and they're officially listed as such, by the way, by the United States government. So, yeah, I would, but how is that any different than people with whom I may disagree from that are also contributing to campaigns of politicians? I don't know that it matters if they're domestic or foreign. In the case of China or Russia, that rises to a new level. We've deemed those, and they are clearly adversarial, and that's a serious concern. I mean, that would almost rise to the level of treason, potentially. So, but I
mean, they literally just arrested the instructor that was in China teaching the Chinese pilots about F-35s.
That's exactly right. Forgot about that. So I don't know this for sure, but I wonder if the president has received contributions from other countries that might be friendly to the United States. I mean,
now this texter says that it's a hilarious and borderline treasonous statement. Remember, this is the same texter that was lionizing Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was against the deportations because her construction company hires illegals. So maybe their definition of treason and patriotism isn't the one we should be basing reality on.
Okay. Well, I think that's it for that conversation right there. Thank you, Rhino. Distrust in the government comes naturally when you attend a place of higher education and learn that your country has been behind the wheel of regime changes all over the world that lead to wars and death, looking at Vietnam. I think that's a bit of a stretch, in my view.
It's also coming from a person that says, yes, please, daddy government, govern me more.
Yeah. I'm looking back through the text
Why on earth
history.
would the Democrats say that they hate America because of starting wars, but they want the government to have more power? It's almost like liberals use circular logic and refuse to exist in reality.
Not almost. I think it's pretty much established, a given. This person also says, do Israelis place the same value on human life? Pretty sure they do. What am I missing there? I've not seen any evidence that they don't. Are they killing their people in the streets the way the regimes in other countries have, such as Iran, such as China, such as North Korea, such as Cuba? Need I go on? There's a pattern there. You see it, don't you? Man. A national security expert, by the way, is urging the Department of Homeland Security to raise the national terror threat. That's because of this shooting that occurred in Austin over the weekend. I'm sure you guys are aware of that. This suspect, a naturalized citizen from Senegal, had on Allah clothing. Obviously, this is an act of terrorism. In my view, the FBI is still investigating it as such. Man, oh man. Speaking of government, we've had a lot of discussions here as we wrap up the first day of this week. We've had a lot of discussions here about education in Mississippi school freedom, education freedom, school choice, and for none other reason, or one of the reasons I should say, is because it represents over 50% of our state general fund spending. But there is a protectionist sentiment that pervades this country among the education establishment. Look no further than Chicago. A recent report indicates there's a public school with space for 912 students, only 28. 28! It's 97% empty. And in fact, the spending per pupil, $93,000 and change. Staff to student ratio of 1-to-1. 0 of the children in this school are proficient at reading. This is what they're protecting. This is what they're protecting. It's mind-boggling, honestly, to think about. Man, oh man. We do have a bill, by the way, that passed our House, sent down to the Senate, that would allow for designated prayer time, would not be forced in our public schools, would not be during the instructional period, it would not be in earshot, you wouldn't be coerced, would require parental permission, consent to participate. Yeah, I think this is fine. I don't think there's any problem with that. I hope that our Senate sees fit to pass it. Haven't heard about any objections. Just wanted to pass on that there is legislation that would, again, carve out some time during the school day. Again, not during instructional period. I want to be clear about that. But if students want to participate in periods before or after, and they can use the school to do so, the folks will come out and say, "You're promoting a religion." No, we're not. We're out of here today. Back with you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.